It begins quietly. No one notices it at first. You're 7 years old, staring into the eyes of a parent who's falling apart. Maybe it's addiction. Maybe it's anger. Or maybe it's the empty silence of someone too broken to show up. And without a single word, something ancient clicks inside your small mind. If I don't hold everything together, no one will. This is how a child disappears, not physically, but psychologically. They smile more, they cry less, they learn to read the room before they speak. They become the emotional thermostat of the household, small adults long before their minds are ready. And the world praises them for it. You're so mature, you're so responsible, you're so strong. But no one ever stops to ask, at what cost? This is the invisible grief of those who grew up too soon. And today, we're going deep inside the psychology of that child. Because the effects don't fade with age, they shape you. They follow you into relationships, into your career, into how you measure your worth. And if you never understand what happened, you'll spend your adult life repeating the same survival patterns that once saved you, but are now slowly destroying you. Let's begin with what's really happening developmentally. When children are forced to emotionally support adults, instead of being supported by them, psychologists call it parentification. It's when a child becomes the caregiver, the peacemaker, the therapist, the protector. This isn't just unhealthy, it rewires the brain. Because when a child is constantly responsible for emotional regulation, their own or others, it creates something called hypervigilance. You're always scanning for danger, walking on eggshells, learning that love is a transaction. You give peace, and maybe they'll give you safety. You learn that your needs are dangerous and theirs are urgent. So you disappear, not physically, but emotionally. And in your place grows a version of you that performs well. You become the good child, the quiet achiever, the therapist friend, the one who never asks for anything. You wear that identity so convincingly that even you forget it's a mask. But deep down, something still hurts. An ache that never really left. Because the child you buried didn't die. They're still inside, screaming silently, "Why didn't anyone protect me?" As you grow older, the symptoms become more complex. You might become hyper, independent, refusing help, pushing people away, never feeling truly safe in love. You might feel numb during happy moments because joy feels unfamiliar, unearned, even dangerous. You might struggle to rest because productivity is the only way you've ever felt worthy. And worst of all, you might not even realize you're still living in survival mode. When dysfunction becomes normal early in life, your nervous system accepts chaos as baseline. Stillness feels wrong. Peace feels suspicious. Love feels like a debt you'll one day have to repay. This is the psychology of a child forced to grow up too fast. It's not just sadness, it's complex trauma, a wound that reshapes how you see the world, and more importantly, how you see yourself. Now you might ask, why would any child willingly take on that role? Because children will do anything for attachment, even if it means abandoning themselves. It's never a conscious choice, it's biological. In the absence of safety, the child sacrifices authenticity for belonging. That's not weakness, that's intelligence, that's instinct. But the tragedy is this: what once saved you now holds you captive. So many of us walk around as high-functioning adults, with deeply neglected inner children pulling the strings. We overachieve to earn love. We stay silent to avoid abandonment. We care for everyone else, yet secretly wish someone would just ask if we're okay. And that fantasy, that someone might finally notice you're not as strong as you seem, that maybe, just maybe, you'll get to fall apart and be held. That's the unmet need, not of your adult self, but of the child who never got to be a child. The first step to healing isn't fixing, it's witnessing. Because until you validate what happened, you'll keep gaslighting yourself with thoughts like, it wasn't that bad. Other people had it worse. I turned out fine. But fine is a mask too. And deep down, you know it. So what happens to that child when they grow up? They become adults who never feel safe, even in calm rooms. They become lovers who can't trust softness. They become givers who can't receive. They become people who apologize for crying, flinch at compliments, and mistake exhaustion for success. This is the cost of growing up too fast. Because if your childhood taught you to be strong instead of soft, quiet instead of honest, to fix others while ignoring your own fractures, then what kind of adulthood do you inherit? You inherit a life where you're always holding your breath, waiting for permission to finally fall apart. But here's the truth: no one's coming to rescue the child you buried. You are the one who must go back and hold their hand. You are the one who must say what no one else ever said. You didn't deserve that. You were just a child. You can rest now. This is where shadow work begins. Not fixing, not performing, not bypassing pain with false positivity, but turning toward the abandoned parts of yourself and saying, I see you now. I hear you now, and I'm not leaving. That's the beginning of repair. And it's brutal, because it asks you to finally feel the grief you never had time to feel. It asks you to sit with the rage, the sorrow, the unmet needs, to weep for the birthdays where no one came, to mourn the innocence you lost while protecting the very people who should have protected you. But that grief, it isn't weakness, it's proof that you're healing, because what was once frozen is finally melting. Now, let's talk about how these survival patterns show up in adulthood. Quietly, tragically, and almost invisibly. You might become the therapist in all your friendships, always listening, but never letting anyone truly see you. You might be praised for your independence, while deep down you're terrified of being a burden. You might find yourself in relationships where you overfunction, fixing, managing, explaining, and wondering why you always end up feeling resentful. You might struggle with boundaries, because saying no still feels like betrayal. These aren't personality traits, they're coping strategies. Learned, conditioned, and thankfully unlearnable. But only when you stop idolizing your strength and start honoring your wounds. One of the most powerful things you can ever ask is this: what did I need back then that I never got? And you may hear quiet answers like, I needed someone to tell me it wasn't my fault. I needed someone to ask how I was doing. I needed to play, to rest, to laugh, without fear. And then slowly, very slowly, you begin to give those things to yourself. Not to fix your past, but to stop reliving it. This is how you stop searching for parents in your partners. This is how you stop mistaking anxiety for intuition. This is how you stop running from the child you were and the self you're still becoming. Carl Jung once said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul, but shadow work asks you to face it, all of it, the neglected, the ashamed, the scared, the angry. Because healing isn't about becoming someone new, it's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. So if you're someone who grew up too fast, remember this: your maturity was never the problem. The problem was, you had no choice. But now you do. You can choose softness. You can choose to rest. You can stop managing everyone else's emotions and start honoring your own. No, it won't happen overnight. There will be days you feel like a child again. Good. That's the point. Let that child come home. Let them cry. Let them play. Let them finally be seen. Because you're not broken. You're becoming whole. And maybe, for the first time, you're finally growing up the right way, not through pressure, not through fear, but through truth. You never had a childhood, but you still have a future. And this time, you get to write it.